I never thought my own daughter would use my grandchildren as leverage to get money from me. After my husband passed away, Megan started circling my finances like a vulture that had just discovered something warm. At first, it was small things: temporary loans, little requests, guilt-wrapped stories about rising bills and shrinking paychecks. But the asks grew bolder. Just last week, she wanted $50,000 for a kitchen renovation. Modern, open concept, magazine-worthy, she said, as if I was funding a photo shoot, not her latest vanity project. And now, a week later, there she was, standing in my living room like a lawyer from some cold courtroom drama, not the daughter I once nursed through chickenpox and heartbreak. Megan, my only child, hair tied back tight like her expression. And beside her, a man in a tailored suit holding a leather folder like it contained the fate of nations. She didn't say hello, didn't sit, just walked straight to the coffee table and dropped the folder in front of me. "Sign the power of attorney," she said, placing the folder neatly on the table like it was just another dinner menu. No hello, no explanation, just instructions. "I know best what to do with your money, and if you don't," her tone dropped into something colder than December wood, "you'll never see the kids again." My throat went dry. My mouth opened, then closed. For a second, I thought maybe I'd misheard her. I stared at her face, searching for the daughter I raised, the girl who used to fall asleep on my chest during thunderstorms, but all I saw was calculation, study, practiced. My legs felt suddenly boneless, but I didn't let her see it. I laughed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't joyful. It was short, a breath, really, but it made the lawyer tilt his head just a hair, and Megan's jaw tightened. I leaned forward slightly, careful to hide the tremble in my hand as I reached for my tea. My hip ached, but I didn't show it.
Not now.
Not here. "Let me just step into the kitchen," I said calmly. "Need to warm this up." She didn't move. The lawyer gave me a polite fake smile as I passed. I reached the kitchen and shut the door. Not hard, not soft, just final. My fingers fumbled as I picked up the phone, but I knew the number by heart. Mr. Callahan, my lawyer for 22 years. He handled Cliff's estate. He handled the title transfer when Megan nearly lost her house to the IRS, and now he would handle this. When he answered, I didn't waste a word. "She brought a man," I said, voice low. "Told me to sign over power of attorney. Said I'd never see the grandkids again if I didn't." He was quiet for half a second. Then, "Don't sign anything. I'll be there first thing in the morning. Do not speak to her again without me." I thanked him, hung up, then stood there staring at the old floral tea towel Megan had embroidered for me in middle school. I kept it out of habit. She'd written, "Best mom ever," in pink thread at the corner. I stared at it until the words blurred. When I returned to the living room, I smiled. "I'll think about it," I said simply. The lawyer's eyebrows rose, surprised. Megan narrowed her eyes. "You don't have time to think." "Oh, I do," I said, sinking back into my chair like I had all the time in the world. Because what she didn't know, what she had clearly forgotten, was that I was the one who bailed her out before. Not the bank, not her husband.
Me.
And now I had no interest in saving her again. Megan and her lawyer were standing now. She glanced at my hands, then at my face. Something flickered in her eyes. Maybe confusion. Maybe suspicion. I didn't flinch. I just smiled, handed her the cup, and sat down again. "I'll think about it," I repeated gently. She sipped the tea, without thanking me.
Typical.
Then she said, like it was a favor, "Don't take too long. This is for your own good, Mom. You've been through a lot. Since Dad died, you've made questionable choices. You gave money to that animal rescue, remember? That rescue was the only place I felt peace last winter. But of course, to her, anything that didn't benefit her was a mistake." Her lawyer finally spoke. "We'll give you a few days. But we strongly advise you to act quickly. With age, decisions like this can be harder to make. Like I was some broken-down filing cabinet they were trying to empty and cart to the curb." "I understand," I said. My voice sounded calm even. But inside, it was a storm.
They left.
She didn't hug me. Not even a pat on the shoulder, just a clipped nod as if we'd had a business meeting, and I was the failing partner. As soon as the door shut behind them, I let the smile drop. My hands were still shaking. The cup rattled slightly on the table. I stared at the lipstick print she left behind on the rim. Pale pink. Always liked looking soft while speaking hard. I walked it slowly to the sink, rinsed it clean, and stood there, hands under cold water. She said I'd never see the kids again. That one hurt more than anything else. Like she knew exactly where to cut. I raised those babies more than she did. I was there at every school pickup when she had late meetings. I sewed the Halloween costumes. I baked the cupcakes. I held her daughter when she had nightmares about wolves under the bed. And now she dangled them like a ransom note. I dried my hands slowly, mechanically, then walked to the front window and pulled the curtain back just enough to watch her pull away in that overly luxurious SUV. They didn't think I'd resist. They thought I'd panic, break down, crumble like dry bread in their hands. But what Megan had forgotten, and what I suddenly so very clearly remembered, was that I owned this house. Every beam, every nail, every faded carpet corner. My name was on the deed, not hers, not that man's. I had given her so much over the years: support, time, quiet forgiveness. But I still had one thing she hadn't counted on: control. That night, I sat by the window in my bedroom, watching the porch light flicker against the dark. The house was quiet except for the faint creak of the baseboards, the familiar hum of nighttime settling in. I'd lived in this house for 34 years. I knew every sound it made, every place the floor groaned, or the cabinet stuck. I held a photo of Megan in my lap. She was 12 in it, skinny legs, scrapes on her knees, smiling through a mouthful of braces. That summer, she'd broken her ankle at day camp. I stayed 3 nights in a plastic hospital chair, barely sleeping, feeding her pudding with a plastic spoon and rubbing her back when she cried. She'd begged me not to leave her alone, and I didn't. Not once. I even slept upright, clutching her hand. I remembered how small she felt then, how scared, how grateful. And now she wanted to take away my right to sign my own name, to write my own checks, to decide where I lived and what I spent, all under the name of concern. A slow, steady ache settled in my chest. I'd raised her alone after Cliff died. She was 14 then, angry, confused. She threw books, slammed doors. I worked 2 jobs and still made it to every parent-teacher conference. I kept the lights on, kept food in the fridge. I let her scream and rage. And I still made her dinner every night. And this was the thanks: one sharp-suited man and a threat about my grandchildren. And suddenly, she thought she could strip me of everything I'd built. No, she didn't think it. She knew it. Because I trained her. I taught her that I would always bend, always say yes, always make peace even when I was breaking inside. I let her believe I was soft. But what she doesn't know, what she's never understood, is that quiet doesn't mean weak. And peacekeeping is not the same as surrender. Outside, a car rolled by slowly. Headlights swept across the window. I watched it go, then stood and opened the drawer of my nightstand. Inside were my will, my insurance papers, and the copy of the house deed I'd insisted on keeping. Tucked beneath it all was a letter from the tax office from years ago when Megan had nearly lost her fixer-upper due to back taxes and begged me to take the deed in my name to help her qualify for forgiveness. "I'll transfer it back once everything's fixed," she'd said. "It's just temporary, Mom. I promise." She never transferred it back, but I never pushed. I let it slide just like I let slide the subtle dismissals, the way she brushed off my opinions at family dinners, the way she slowly stopped asking me things unless they involved checks. That was my fault. I made it easy. The next day, I pulled into the elementary school parking lot 10 minutes early. I didn't want to miss them. I used to love pickup days. That sweet chaos of backpacks and sneakers. The way the kids ran to me, flinging arms around my waist like I was their entire world. It had been our little ritual. I'd bring a snack. We'd talk about their day, then drive home singing show tunes with the windows down. But lately, things had shifted. The teachers looked at me a little too long now. The office ladies smiled too kindly, like I was a guest. They weren't sure there. Megan had probably told them I was forgetful. Mom's having trouble. I could almost hear her saying in that honeyed, rehearsed voice. We're just keeping an eye on things. And that morning, it became real. Travis, my grandson, climbed into the car and leaned in close. Nana, he whispered. Mom says you're getting confused a lot now. The words hit me like a slap. Not angry, not even cruel, just curious, like he was repeating a fun fact. I froze. She said that. He nodded, already pulling out a granola bar. Yeah, like that you forget things and that she has to help you more now. My stomach dropped, confused. She'd been planting it. I could see it now, like carefully sowing poison in a garden. It wasn't enough to get my signature. She was crafting a version of me, one that was fragile, incapable, easy to override. And worse, she was using them to do it, my own grandchildren. I swallowed down the lump in my throat. Do I seem confused to you, sweetheart? He shrugged. I don't know. I don't think so. But Mom says you forgot your phone last week at the diner and couldn't find your keys. That phone? It had slipped under the seat. And the keys? They were in the bottom of my purse. But now I saw Megan had been collecting these tiny, ordinary moments, twisting them into a pattern, a case. And probably not just with Travis. I looked toward the school building. One of the teachers stood by the entrance, watching the cars roll by. When her eyes landed on me, her smile was just a little too polished, not friendly, performative, like someone who's been told to be nice to the old woman who's going through something. I realized I hadn't seen the kids' artwork on my fridge in over a month. I hadn't been asked to babysit in weeks. She was slowly closing the door on me. I kept my voice bright as we drove back to Megan's house. Travis chatted about his science project while I gripped the wheel with white knuckles, thinking. When we pulled up, Megan was outside pretending to water her garden. She waved with that picture-perfect smile. I waved back like nothing had changed, but everything had because now I knew the truth. She wasn't just after my money. She was preparing the story to take everything, laying the groundwork to make me look like the problem, the vulnerable one. And I saw it so clearly now. Every overly sweet smile, every reminder of things I'd forgotten, every time she insisted on handling the bank or the bills, she wasn't helping. She was rewriting me. And I wasn't about to let that be the final draft. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was scared. Not exactly. It was more like a pulse, steady and unrelenting, thudding beneath my ribs. Not dread, readiness. By 8 a.m., I had already dressed. Slacks, blouse, the blue cardigan with the shell buttons, the one Cliff always said made me look sure of myself. I tucked the deed into a fresh folder along with my will, my bank documents, and 2 typed pages of notes. Small things I remembered. Megan asking for check access, just for groceries. Her hinting to the doctor that I was repeating myself, the accidental call she made to the insurance company using my birth date. I was going to stop pretending these things weren't happening. At 10 o'clock sharp, I pushed open the door to Callahan and Burroughs. It smelled like paper and old wood. Familiar, safe. His assistant, Linda, looked up from her desk and smiled with a softness I hadn't seen in weeks.
June, she said warmly.
Mr. Callahan's ready for you. He stood when I entered, still tall, still serious-eyed after all these years. He didn't waste time with pleasantries.
Tell me everything, he said.
And I did. The threats, the power of attorney push, the way Megan used the grandkids like bait, her lawyer, the whispers at the barbecue. I told him how I'd found the deed, that she never took it back, that now she was acting like she'd always owned the place. Mr. Callahan's brow furrowed deeper as I went on. Finally, I slid the folder across the desk. He flipped it open, stared. You still hold the title, he said, tapping the page. It was never reconveyed. It's yours. I nodded, swallowing hard. Can she force me into guardianship? He looked up, eyes sharp. Not if we act first. If she's threatening power of attorney, she may already be whispering to Adult Protective Services. You need to protect yourself and your property before she paints you as incompetent. I sat back in my chair, chest tight. This wasn't just emotional anymore. It was legal. What can I do? He leaned forward. We move fast and we do it quietly. We can transfer the property into a trust with you as trustee. That makes it harder for anyone to try to assume control or claim ownership. You can also set conditions like rent or removal. I blinked. Rent? I could charge her. I said slowly. You mean I could ask them to pay to stay in my house? You wouldn't be asking, June, he said gently. You'd be enforcing. I stared at the papers in front of me. They felt heavy, not with fear, but with proof, with my own forgotten power. She used to call me her best friend, I whispered. Now she's trying to erase me like a name off a check. He didn't try to comfort me. He just nodded. That's often how it starts. They dress control up as care. It's common. But you're not helpless. Not even close. I left the office with copies, instructions, and a list of next steps. As I stepped outside, the wind caught my hair. I didn't mind. I let it move through me. Megan had made a mistake. She thought she'd cornered me. But I had the one thing she didn't plan for, a paper trail. And now I had a lawyer walking right behind it. 2 days later, I walked into the bank. Not the fancy online kind Megan kept pushing me toward, but the one downtown with the marble floors and real people at real desks. The same place Cliff and I opened our first joint account in 1976. The teller still remembered me. Miss Holloway, she smiled. How's that rose garden coming? I smiled back. Stubborn as ever, like me. She laughed, but the laugh didn't reach my bones the way it used to because I wasn't here for socializing. I was here to find out just how far Megan had already reached. I asked to see a banker, someone who handled trusts and account access. A young man with kind eyes and too much cologne led me to his office. What can I help you with today, Miss Holloway? I opened my folder, laid out my notes, and cleared my throat. I believe someone recently attempted to access my trust account, I said carefully. I need to know if there's been any activity under my name or if anyone's tried to be added as a signer. He raised an eyebrow and typed something into his computer. The room filled with the soft clack of keys. Then his hands froze. He turned the screen slightly, angling it so I could see. Not too obvious, but enough. Megan Holloway, my daughter, my flesh and blood, listed on a pending authorization form for my trust. She claimed to be a co-signer, he said softly. But we flagged the request. Her name's not on any current documents. She used your old license number to verify. Old license? The one I lost 3 years ago? The one she offered to shred for me. I felt my mouth go dry. She said it was for convenience. The banker continued, we streamlined investments. She claimed you had memory issues, but we couldn't verify it. So, we didn't proceed. My hands clenched around my purse strap. Not rage, not quite, just cold. A steady, settling cold. Like the moment you realize someone has not only betrayed you, they planned it. She wanted everything, I whispered. The banker didn't respond. He just printed the access request and slid it across the table toward me. I folded the paper without reading it. I'd like to freeze this account temporarily, I said. And I'd like to be the only one authorized to make changes. No verbal permissions. All in writing. He nodded. I left the bank feeling steadier than I had in weeks. Megan wasn't just greedy. She was desperate. She'd tried to sneak in through the side door. Maybe she thought I'd never check. Maybe she thought I couldn't. But she forgot who raised her. I taught her to keep receipts, to ask questions, to stand up for herself. She just never thought I'd turn those lessons around. As I drove home, I remembered something Mr. Callahan said. When they start talking about your memory, it's because they're hoping you won't remember the truth. Well, I remembered everything. I remembered the look on Megan's face when I told her no for the first time in years. I remembered how fast she turned. And now I remembered one thing she desperately hoped I'd forget. That my name still holds weight. At the bank, at the courthouse, and very soon at the front door of the house she thinks she owns. That evening, I sat in the garden behind my house. The sun was sinking low, brushing gold against the rose bushes Cliff planted 30 years ago. He loved those roses. Said they made the house feel alive, even when it was quiet. They'd gone a bit wild since he passed. I let them. It felt wrong to tame something he loved wild. But tonight, I trimmed them with purpose. Each snip of the shears felt like an exhale, a letting go. Not of him, but of the version of Megan I'd been holding on to. The one I believed still had pieces of the girl I raised. The one who used to beg for bedtime stories and sneak extra peppermints from my purse in church. But that girl hadn't come around in a long time. The woman in her place saw me as an obstacle, a bank account, a signature on a dotted line. And maybe I'd known that quietly deep down. But like so many mothers, I'd told myself lies because the truth was too sharp. Being used by your own child doesn't wound, it hollows. I paused near the white rose bush, the one he called my snow queen, and sat down on the bench we picked out at that garden fair in '98. My knees ached. My back pulsed, but I felt steady. Steadier than I'd felt in months. Because I wasn't lost. I wasn't declining. I wasn't in over my head. I was simply tired of pretending her cruelty was care. Megan wanted control. But she underestimated one thing. I'm still here. I still have the deed, the bank's report, the memory, the will. And now I had a plan, not revenge.
I didn't want that.
I wanted boundaries. Legal, quiet, firm. Mr. Callahan had already begun filing the trust paperwork. Soon the property she slept in, painted in, played house in would be under a legal shell. Mine with a lease, with rights, with consequences if she pushed again. I looked up at the sky, soft with twilight. I don't want to fight her, I whispered aloud. The garden didn't answer, but something in me did. Then don't fight.
Protect.
That's what I was doing now. And maybe in some strange way, Megan had done me a favor. All those little humiliations, all those digs and power grabs, they'd forced me to remember who I was before I got small, before I got quiet. I used to advocate for patients who couldn't speak. I argued with surgeons, fought for Cliff's dignity when he couldn't fight for himself. I raised a daughter on a nurse's salary and gave her everything. And now I was going to protect myself with the same force because being alone, that's hard, but being used, that's worse. The wind rustled through the bushes. One white rose fell into my lap. I cupped it gently. I still love her. That doesn't change. But I'm finally learning I can love her without surrendering myself. I stood slowly. My joints protested, but I didn't care. There were more forms to sign tomorrow, more pieces to line up. But tonight, in this garden Cliff built, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time.
Steady.
I only meant to run in for eggs and bread, but the grocery store parking lot gave me more than I bargained for. I saw Derek before he saw me. Near the cart return, phone pressed to his ear, pacing with those agitated little half-steps men do when they think they're alone. I told you we need that loan approved by the end of the month, he snapped. No, the appraisal's fine. They just haven't finalized the deed verification yet. My spine prickled. He turned slightly, and that's when I saw his face, red, sweat beading at the hairline. He was unraveling. They still think her name is on the title, he hissed. We can't move forward until it's corrected. Just tell them it's a mistake. I'm working on it. Her name. I stood there frozen by the fruit stand, clutching my little cart like a shield. They hadn't told the bank. They were using my house, my name, my equity to secure a renovation loan they never had rights to. And now they were stuck. Derek cursed under his breath and hung up. He turned around too quickly and saw me freeze that exact second, two wide eyes of guilt trying to rearrange themselves into a smile. June, he said, too bright. Didn't see you there. Apparently, I said, pushing my cart forward slowly. No one sees me these days until I'm between them and what they want. His jaw twitched. That's not fair. Fair, I said, pausing just long enough for the silence to sting, is not a word I'd recommend using with me today. We stood there between the parked cars, between pretense and exposure. He shifted his weight. Look, I know there's been tension lately. Megan, she's just trying to do what's best. For who? That shut him up. Behind us, the automatic doors whooshed open. A mother and child passed by with balloons. Derek looked away. He hated scenes. I know about the loan, I said plainly. I know you tried to use the house as collateral. I know you never told the bank it wasn't yours.
He started to speak.
I raised one hand.
No explanations.
Just know this. I filed the trust. The deed is moving. And very soon, the house you're standing in won't just belong to me in name. It will belong to me in structure. And you'll need a lease. A what? A lease? I repeated, a rental agreement monthly signed. His face drained of color. You wouldn't do that. I would. I am. The moment hung in the air, heavy, slow, devastating. He looked like a man watching his reflection crack in a rearview mirror and, realizing too late, he was the one driving off the cliff. I suggested, I added softly, you don't spend another dollar on that kitchen until the paperwork clears. Then I walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't need to because I had just seen it with my own eyes, the panic. They'd gambled on my silence. They built dreams on a name that wasn't theirs. And now they were going to learn what happens when a woman they mistook for weak finally picks up her power. 3 days later, I sat across from Mr. Callahan again. Same polished desk, same smell of lemon oil and ink. But this time, I wasn't clutching my papers like armor. This time, I walked in with my chin up. He laid out the trust documents between us. The ink still smelled fresh. It's official, he said. You're the sole trustee. The house is no longer a free asset. It's protected. If Megan or Derek try anything now, they'll hit a wall of legal filings. I stared at the pages, neat lines, my name over and over again. Not as next of kin or emergency contact, but as owner, trustee, authority. Do I need to tell her? I asked. He looked at me for a long second, then leaned back. You don't have to tell her anything, he said calmly. You've already been telling her for years. With your help, your money, your silence, what you do now isn't a conversation, it's enforcement. That word settled over me like a coat, enforcement. I want to include rent terms, I said. Not high, just fair. And I want the right to remove them if they don't comply. He nodded and pulled out a draft, already prepared. 30 days notice. You have every legal right now. I took a breath. It felt good, strange, but good. Not revenge. Not even satisfaction. Just relief. The kind that comes from no longer pretending you don't see the fire crawling under your own door. Mr. Callahan adjusted his glasses. There's something else. He slid over a thin stack of paper, copies of Megan's attempts to access my accounts, the flagged bank request, notes from my previous doctor's appointments. We've documented a pattern, he said quietly. She's been trying to paint a picture. Slow erosion, small things, forgetfulness, financial confusion, dependency. If you hadn't come when you did, she might have filed for conservatorship within the year. My stomach turned. She'd really try that. He looked me in the eye. June, she already started. I sat back. The room shifted, not with fear, but with clarity. That's why she mentioned my medications at dinner. Why she corrected me in front of the grandkids. Mom, you already said that. Why she insisted on just handling the bills after my surgery. Not kindness, strategy. She'd been digging a moat around my rights. Quietly, persistently. She was going to erase me, I said softly. No, he replied, tapping the folder. She tried, but now there's a paper trail that says otherwise. He stood and offered me a pen. One signature here, and you finalize your protection. I signed, not with a flourish, not with a shaky hand, just steady, like I was marking a line in the sand, one I wouldn't be dragged past again. As I gathered my things, Mr. Callahan walked me to the door. What do you want to do next? I want to deliver the truth, I said. No yelling, no scene, just consequences and a lease. He smiled gently. You don't have to explain yourself, June. But I did. Not to her, to me. Because for so long, I thought love meant staying quiet. But now I knew love without respect is just another form of control, and I was done being controlled. Saturday morning, I arrived at Megan's house with a property agent and a sealed envelope. No announcement, no warm, "Hi, sweetie, just me." Standing on the porch of a house I legally owned, watching her pretend she still held the keys to everything. She opened the door with a smile so forced it nearly cracked. "Oh, we're busy," she said quickly, glancing over her shoulder. Somewhere inside, I heard the kids shouting over cartoons. Can we talk another time? I didn't move. I simply handed her the envelope. She blinked down at it. What's this? Read it, I said. Then we'll talk. She hesitated, then tore the seal open with her thumbnail, and her eyes began moving faster, then slower, then frozen. Inside were 3 documents: the finalized trust paperwork, the new lease agreement, and a letter revoking all unauthorized renovation permits filed in her name. I waited. The silence stretched long and flat. Derek appeared behind her holding a coffee mug. One look at the envelope in her hand, and the color drained from his face. I'm your landlord now, I said quietly. You have 30 days to either sign the lease and pay rent or vacate the premises. Megan's lips parted, but no sound came out. I kept my voice calm. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I'd practiced every word. Not for drama, but for precision. You told me you knew best. That you'd take care of my money, my mind, my life. I met her eyes steady. Well, I've taken care of mine. Now it's time you take care of yours. Within limits. You can't do this, she finally whispered. Derek stepped forward, but I lifted one hand. No, let her speak for herself. She was shaking now. With rage, with shock, maybe both, but I didn't look away. You said if I didn't give you power of attorney, I'd never see the kids again. I continued. That was your first mistake. I pointed gently to the papers. This was mine. I waited too long to act. The property agent, a tall woman named Karen with gray curls and a clipboard, cleared her throat. We'll need a signed response within 10 business days, or the lease offer will be considered declined and proceedings may follow. Megan looked like she might explode. You're serious? She choked out. You do this to your own daughter? You did this. I said, voice flat. I'm just responding. Her hand gripped the door frame. Derek said nothing. I took a step back. Not retreat, space. I'll expect a reply soon, I said, and I turned, not rushed, not theatrical, just firm. I heard the door slam behind me as I walked down the steps, but that noise meant nothing now. That door no longer held power over me. Back in the car, I sat quietly for a moment before starting the engine. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just felt still for the first time in years. I wasn't trying to make things okay. I wasn't smoothing over pain with cookies and babysitting. I was drawing the line, and I just handed her a pen to either sign or walk away. She wanted control, but now she had a choice. Pay rent or leave. Either way, I had my dignity back. And this time, I wasn't giving it away, not even to my own blood. The next afternoon, Megan showed up at my house uninvited. No text, no call, just a car door slamming too hard, fast footsteps up the porch, and then the sharp, urgent knock that didn't ask permission. The knock that always assumed I'd open. I didn't rush. I walked slowly, deliberately, and opened the door just wide enough. She was shaking. You can't do this to me, she snapped. Not Mom. Not. Can we talk? Just that one sentence, full of fury and disbelief. Like this was some sort of betrayal. Like I was the one stealing something. I can, I said calmly. I already have. She shoved the papers into my chest. This is a joke. A sick, manipulative stunt. You're trying to punish me? No, I said steady. I'm protecting myself. Her face twisted. You'd rather see your daughter evicted than just trust me after everything I've done for you? You mean taking my driver's license info to the bank? I asked. She flinched. You mean telling my grandson I was confused? Filing renovation permits without ownership? Planning a loan you had no right to request? Her mouth opened, then shut. You don't get to stand on my porch and scream about loyalty, I said. Not when you use love as a cover for theft. I was helping, she shouted, voice cracking. You're not the same, Mom. You repeat yourself. You forget things. I was trying to manage before it got worse. I leaned against the frame. And who decides when it's worse? You, your lawyer, the bank? I am your family. You are my family, I said. Now you're a tenant. Until you decide otherwise. Silence. Just the birds in the hedge. The faint sound of traffic down the block. Her breathing.
Shallow. Angry. Exposed.
You think the kids won't notice? She hissed. You think you can twist this and keep them loving you? That one almost did it. Almost. But I trained for this moment. Through years of swallowing disappointment, through months of steady betrayal, I didn't flinch. They'll know I stood my ground, I said. They'll know I didn't go down quietly. And maybe one day they'll understand why. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't, because the woman she was used to, the one who always backed down, always paid, always apologized for making things difficult, she was gone. I straightened. You have 10 days to respond to the lease. After that, the decision moves out of your hands. Megan looked down, shaking her head. You don't get it. You're old. You're bitter. You think this is strength, but it's just loneliness in a new outfit. I smiled just barely. Being alone, I said, is not the same as being used. She stepped back, chest heaving. You'll regret this, she spat. I closed the door slowly, gently. No, I whispered through the wood. I regret waiting this long. I locked it. For the first time, not out of fear, but out of peace. The next time I stepped into Megan's kitchen, the place looked different. Boxes lined the walls. The backsplash tile she'd once bragged about sat half-installed, jagged and unfinished. The smell of drywall dust hung in the air. Not fresh, not settled, just stuck like the feeling in the room. She didn't offer me tea, didn't say hello, just sat at the breakfast bar, scrolling her phone with one finger, slow and angry. Derek was in the garage pretending to be busy. And the kids, they were upstairs giggling. That sound still softened me, but only a little. The property manager had already been by earlier that week. Walked the house, took photos, verified compliance. It was mine again. Not in theory, but in operation. And now rent would come in monthly, quietly, automatically. No more family discounts. No more help us just this once. No more guilt twisted into requests.
She signed.
And now she followed the rules like any tenant would. She didn't talk much anymore, just bitter nods and clipped one-word answers. But the manipulation was gone. That syrupy tone she used when she wanted something, gone. That smug look when she thought I didn't notice what she was doing, gone. Only the quiet remained. The kind that comes after you've lost something you thought would never say no to you. I walked into the kitchen and placed a box of oatmeal cookies on the counter. Travis's favorite. That was the only reason I came by. He'd called and asked if he could come spend the night soon. Asked, not begged. That mattered. They're for the kids, I said. Megan didn't look up. They're at a birthday party tomorrow, I said, then waited a beat. And this isn't a favor. I'm their grandmother. I have rights, too. She didn't argue, didn't roll her eyes, didn't even flinch. She just kept scrolling like the screen held the version of her life where she still rented things. I'm not punishing you, Megan, I said, softer than I expected. I just stopped letting you pretend I don't see what's happening. Still no answer, just silence and pixels. You said I'd regret this, I added. But I don't, and I didn't. Then I left. This time I didn't cry in the car. Didn't question myself. Didn't second-guess the lines I'd drawn. Because love without boundaries isn't love. It's surrender. And I was done surrendering.